Hey everyone, and welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're going to dive into something absolutely fascinating. We are completely deconstructing one of the most famous quotes in human history. I mean, we've all seen it, we all kind of know it by heart, but I guarantee you the real story behind this quote is infinitely more powerful than the version we usually hear. We're going to dig right into the history, the context, and the profound meaning of a text that, honestly, has been fundamentally misunderstood for generations. So here it is. For I know the plans I have for you, declares the Lord. Plans to prosper you and not to harm you. Plans to give you hope and a future. Now, if you've ever, say, attended a high school graduation or walked into a bookstore or even just casually scrolled through your social media feed, you've definitely seen this. It's universally recognized. It's essentially become the ultimate self-help verse, right? You see it printed on everything from morning coffee mugs to framed inspirational posters.
But that brings us to a really massive question. One that completely flips our modern understanding upside down. What if this ultimate self-help verse isn't actually about personal success at all? See, to millions of people today, this text is treated as a divine guarantee. It's viewed as a rock-solid promise for a job promotion, or absolute financial prosperity, or just a smooth, comfortable life where things go your way. But what if that whole pop culture assumption has it entirely backward?
The startling truth is that applying this quote to our own personal comfort completely misses the point of the history. The real story behind these ancient words, it isn't a promise of an easy life at all. Actually, it's a survival guide for a brutal, catastrophic crisis. So we're going to go on a bit of a myth-busting journey to uncover what was actually happening when these words were first written down. And to do that, we're going to have to leave our modern comforts behind.
Section 1. The brutal reality of exile, going all the way back to 597 BC.
To really get this, we have to travel back in time exactly 2,600 years to roughly 597 BC and just try to build some empathy for the people living through this absolute nightmare. King Nebuchadnezzar's army didn't just conquer Jerusalem, they literally dismantled it. Palaces were burned completely to the ground, sacred temples were aggressively plundered, and then came the ultimate horror. Thousands of citizens were dragged away in chains. I want you to just imagine that for a second. Imagine being ripped from the only home you've ever known, watching your city burn to ash, and then being forced to march 500 miles across a brutal, unforgiving desert to live as a prisoner of war.
The raw human emotion of that moment just cannot be overstated. The Israelites were traumatized, they were hopeless, and they were deeply, deeply confused. Suddenly, they're trapped in an alien empire. The psychological toll of a crisis like this was severe. Literally everything they believed about their safety, their identity, their entire future, just gone. They were living as captives in a foreign land, completely desperate for any tiny shred of good news.
Section 2. A devastating reality check and two competing messages.
So right in the middle of this absolute despair, a huge wave of confusion erupts. The exiles are desperately looking for hope, but they're suddenly caught between two very different messages. On one side, you've got these false prophets, basically ancient purveyors of what we'd call toxic positivity. They're running around claiming God is going to smash Babylon in just 2 years and send everyone right back home. And of course, the captives are ecstatic. They pack their bags, they completely refuse to unpack, and they just waited eagerly for this instant miracle. But then, on the other side, a letter arrives from Jerusalem. It's written by the prophet Jeremiah, and his message? Well, it was a devastating reality check.
What's absolutely shocking here is what Jeremiah actually tells this group of people who just wanted to go home. In chapter 29, verses 4 through 7, he lays out what God actually wants them to do. And he doesn't say, hey, keep your bags packed. Not at all. He says, build houses and settle down, plant gardens and eat the produce, marry and have kids. And honestly, the wildest part of all, he tells them to actively work for the peace and prosperity of the enemy city where they're being held captive. I mean, why on earth would he tell them to do that?
Well, it's because of one devastating number. In verse 10, God drops the ultimate mathematical bombshell on these captives. He says, when 70 years are completed for Babylon, I will come to you and fulfill my good promise to bring you back. 70 years. Just let that sink in for a moment.
Let's actually do the devastating math on that number. If you're a 20-year-old captive reading that letter from Jeremiah, it meant you were never going home. You were going to grow old, live your life, and eventually die as an exile in Babylon. That promise of returning home wasn't for you, it was for your kids and really your grandchildren. This completely permanently shifted the paradigm for everyone listening. It was a permanent death sentence to their immediate hopes of some easy rescue.
And this brilliantly illustrates exactly why context is everything. Because it is right here, right after handing down a 70-year sentence in captivity, that this famous verse occurs. God tells them they are stuck in Babylon for 7 long decades, and then immediately says, "For I know the plans I have for you, plans to prosper you and not to harm you, plans to give you hope and a future." When you know that this verse was spoken to people who were explicitly told they were going to die in captivity, it kind of changes the meaning entirely, doesn't it?
Part 3, redefining prosperity and the true meaning of Shalom.
To really grasp this, we have to shift our focus from just the historical context to a really deep linguistic redefinition. I mean, what does it actually mean to prosper while you're literally living as a prisoner of war? When modern readers see the word prosper, our minds immediately jump to, wealth, perfect health, a total lack of problems. But if we look at the original Hebrew text, the word used there is shalom. And shalom doesn't mean financial wealth or getting an easy promotion. It means wholeness, completeness, mental peace, and systemic well-being. God wasn't promising the Israelites that they'd get super rich in Babylon or that their lives would suddenly be painless.
Instead, it was this: a radical guarantee that your soul can experience wholeness even under an oppressive empire. He was promising them that even in the middle of their absolute deepest suffering, He could grow them and sustain them right there. The verse is actually this profound promise that the current tragedy they were facing wasn't the final chapter, and that systemic well-being could actually be found right there, inside the suffering. Section 4, Peace in the Storm, and Modern Application. This completely changes how we read this text. So the crucial takeaway here is connecting that Babylonian exile to the very real, very painful modern crises that we face today. Look, you might not be a prisoner of war, but we all face our own forms of exile, right? Maybe it's a sudden career layoff that completely pulled the rug out from under you, a devastating broken relationship, a terrifying medical crisis, or honestly, just a long, painful season of waiting for something to change. The message of Jeremiah is that in these exact moments, God hasn't abandoned the script. When we use Jeremiah 29:11 as just a lucky charm for instant success, we're actually diluting its true massive power. It is not a promise that you're going to be saved from every difficult situation. God's plans operate on a timeline much, much bigger than our immediate desire for comfort. Just like the Israelites had to do in Babylon, true hope requires us to stop waiting for an instant escape. We have to unpack our bags and figure out how to live and find wholeness right here in a broken world.
Because true hope isn't the absence of a storm, it's the presence of peace right in the middle of it. So I want to leave you with this final provocative thought to chew on today. If true hope isn't the absence of a storm, how will you find peace in the middle of yours? Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer, and I really hope this deeper look gives you a totally new perspective the next time you encounter this famous verse.